The Honda Civic. They say it's the gateway car for a lot of car modders and car enthusiasts. For us 90s kids, it was the attainable, cool car. It has grown quite a bit since the EGs, EKs, and FDs that we cherished. Is it still worthy of the nameplate? Let's find out. Here in the Philippines, we get three variants of the new Civic. The RS Turbo, the V, and then this right here is the base model S. I think the S is the sweet spot in the lineup, especially for those who like modifying cars. We'll get to that in a while. For now, let's talk about the most controversial aspect of the new Civic: the styling. Among Honda owners, there's this common knowledge that Honda's design goes from youthful and aggressive to mature and conservative every generation. I've actually owned every generation of the Civic from the 5th all the way to the 8th, and I can confirm that there's a bit of truth to that. For example, the 6th was sporty and aggressive, the 7th was a bit more mature, the 8th was again sporty and aggressive, the 9th was a lot more mature, and then the 10th is the most aggressive looking Civic so far. This 11th gen Civic doesn't break tradition. It's a very conservative and very mature looking car. It almost looks like a Honda Accord. It's a lot bigger now. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps the most controversial part of the new Civic's design is this nose over here. Now some people have likened it to the nose of a beluga whale, and I can see where they're coming from. Now this has grown on me since I first saw it, but I think this would definitely look better if it was wrapped in black, this entire section right here, so it doesn't stand out so much. This base model gets halogen headlamps, but they are projectors, so if you want to upgrade them later on to LEDs, it should be easier. It gets LED DRLs though. This base model also doesn't get fog lamps, but you do get provisions here in case you want to install them later on. I like this aggressive lip over here. So all variants of the Civic will now come with Honda sensing, including this base variant. So you do get a radar unit over there. The Civic S comes with 16-inch wheels, which look pretty small for the car. It definitely would benefit from a wheel size upgrade. The next higher variant comes with 17s, and the top of the line RS comes with 18s. The car gets these L-shaped LED tail lamps. You have this lip on the trunk, which kind of looks like a ducktail spoiler, and you also have this lip on the lower bumper. On the base model, there is no way to open the trunk without using either the key fob or going inside the car. There is no button over here. So to open it, like I said, you either use a key fob or you press the button inside the car. So in here, you have this much cargo space, which is actually quite a lot. Now, if you need more space, you can fold down the second row seats, and you don't even have to go inside the car to do it. You can just pull on this, and then you'll have to push the seat forward, like so. Straight and horizontal lines seem to be the theme of Honda's current designs. You can see that in the interior, as well as the exterior, especially here on the side profile. You have this straight and horizontal shoulder line that runs from the front all the way to the back. The window line is almost completely horizontal. I think the horizontal lines create a less dynamic but more mature look. For comparison, here's the 10th gen Civic with a lot of upswept lines and a more wedge-shaped look. The previous gen looks a lot more aggressive. It looks like it's crouched down and ready to pounce. And here's the 11th gen looking relaxed and chill. This has a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine that puts out 175 horsepower and 240 Nm of torque. Definitely the most powerful base model Civic ever. The engine is coupled to a CVT transmission. Okay, so Honda went with a more minimalist design on the new Civic's interior. the highlight here is this honeycomb grille over the aircon vents, which I think adds much needed detail to the interior. Yeah, so you can barely see where the aircon vents are. They're actually 4 aircon vents, and you adjust them using these joysticks over here. You get these piano black accents over here. On the center console, you have this textured material, which from afar looks like carbon fiber. It looks better than flat black plastic, and it looks more scratch resistant than piano black plastic. This may be a base model, but you get some soft touch materials, like the top of the dashboard is soft padded. And that's about it really. Everything else is made of hard plastic. You also get a polyurethane or plastic steering wheel. Now thankfully you get padded armrests, although they're covered in fabric. The seats are also covered in fabric, and they're both manually adjustable. It gets a 7-inch screen. It's quite small, but again, this is the base model, so I'm not going to complain about that. It has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto, it also has a reverse camera, and thankfully you get physical knobs and buttons. Yeah, so you can operate this without having to look at the screen. So overall, it's an okay looking interior. It doesn't look premium, but I don't think Honda was going for that. What's important is that it looks, you get a sense of quality when you touch certain things, like these knobs over here. They feel good to the touch. They have a satisfying click when you rotate the knobs. Yeah, everything feels solid, nothing creaks. It feels like a global car, which it is. So it looks like it's built to satisfy global standards. Yeah, in terms of storage, the glove box is, surprisingly, it's dampened. Now, I wouldn't exactly call this spacious, but you can probably fit a couple of smaller items in it. The center armrest is covered in fabric, but thankfully it's very nicely padded. And underneath you get pretty good storage. You get 2 sizable cup holders, which are big enough to fit this water jug. And they also have these spring-loaded tabs so you can fit smaller cups in them. This gets an electronic parking brake with auto hold. You get a push start button. You get plenty of buttons on the steering wheel because, like I said before, this has Honda safety sense. Yeah, so it's basic, but everything feels well executed. Definitely the new Civic is a lot more spacious than the previous one. It's a lot longer now, and the wheelbase is also a lot longer. And you can see that reflected in the interior. You have a lot more legroom now. Headroom is pretty okay for a car with a sloping roofline. I have about 2 to 2.5 inches of headroom. On the base model, you don't get a lot of toys here. You don't get aircon vents, you don't get USB ports, you don't get 12-volt outlets. But you do get this center armrest, which I wish was a little bit higher. And you also get 2 cup holders on it. Even the base model of the Civic now comes with Honda Sensing. So Honda Sensing is Honda's full suite of advanced driver aids and active safety features. Like it has adaptive cruise control, which I have turned on right now. So my feet are not doing anything, it's automatically speeding up and slowing down on its own. It can even come to a complete stop, and it'll automatically resume when the car in front of me moves. Okay, so here I'm not stepping on the gas and brakes. The car is practically driving itself. I'm just providing steering input. Now, I love driving, but not through heavy traffic. And if I had the option, I'd rather delegate it. So this is EDSA traffic from Ortigas to Cubao. And I had adaptive cruise turned on about 95% of the time. So when I got home, I wasn't as tired as I normally would be. Just one minor complaint though, the adaptive cruise of the Civic tends to leave too much space in front of you, even at its minimum setting. It also has lane keep assist. Now think of this more as an active safety feature than autopilot for your steering. The idea is even if you get drowsy or fall asleep, your chances of veering off your lane are lower. Okay, it's veering off now. Just have my hands here, ready to intervene if I ever have to. Okay, had to. Unlike adaptive cruise for your brakes and throttle, lane keep assist is not reliable enough to act as autopilot for your steering just yet. It also has collision mitigation, which I think is a very important feature. If it senses a collision, it will try to avoid it by applying the brakes automatically. Although designed as a compact family car, the Honda Civic has always been on the sportier end of the spectrum, at least relative to its competitors like the Corolla. Like the previous generation and unlike some of its competitors, the Civic has fully independent suspension on all four corners. It has McPherson's at the front and double wishbones at the back. The chassis is 19% stiffer than the previous generation, and that helps improve handling and also noise levels. Absolutely nothing creaks when you go over uneven surfaces. It feels solid as a rock. Even though it's more performance-oriented than the Corolla Altis, it is still a very comfortable car. Because it's slower, the suspension can be made softer without affecting handling so much. So it can absorb road imperfections really well, but still feel quite planted in the corners. Speaking of height, with a ground clearance of 134mm, it is a bit on the low side. For most people at least. Which means that you can probably drop it by an inch more. Seriously though, it's enough clearance to clear most humps without doing the S maneuver. It now has a lot more horses under the hood. Almost 40 more horses than the previous generation. But since it has a CVT, those horses tend to feel a bit more tame than you would expect. When you bury the throttle, you hear a lot of noise, but it takes a while for the speed to catch up with the sound. Yeah, if I step on the gas right now, it does catch up eventually though, and 0 to 100 can be achieved in just about 8 seconds, which is pretty quick. 0 to 100. You get fake shifts, which minimize the drone that you get on other CVTs. There is no option to manually shift though, which is a bit of a bummer. I did appreciate the paddle shifters on the city. The advantage of the CVT though is that it's very fuel efficient. In the city I got about 9 kpl, and on the highway I got as much as 23 kpl with a very light foot. About 400,000 pesos separates the base model Civic S from the top spec Civic RS. Unlike the previous generation, the RS gets the same engine, transmission, and mechanicals as the other variants, including the S. All variants also now get Honda sensing, so the differences are mostly cosmetic and relatively minor. Like you lose the rear aircon vents, which might matter to you if you're a family man, but if you're anything like me, you probably don't care about the people sitting in the back seat. I mean, no one sits there anyway on any of my cars. You also give up on the leather seats, the leather steering wheel, and a bunch of other things. On the outside, you lose the 18-inch wheels, the spoiler, the LED headlights, which brings me back to what I said at the start of the video. If you're the kind of person who likes modifying cars, this would be the ideal base for mods. You have the most important things covered, like the engine, the mechanicals, Honda sensing. The rest you can tweak to your own liking. And with 400,000 pesos in savings, you have a lot of headroom for mods. It has a turbocharged engine, so it is a lot easier to squeeze more power out of it. With just an ECU tune, some have squeezed as much as 34 horsepower and 68 Newton meters of torque at the flywheel for a total of almost 200 horsepower. For those who are into cosmetic mods, definitely a set of 18s would make this look a lot more aggressive. So that's the new Honda Civic. Like its predecessors, it still offers practicality, fun, coolness, and tunability in one package. It has grown up a lot since the EGs, EKs, and FDs that we cherished, and so have I. But still, the first thing that I think of when I look at it is how good it would look on a set of 18s and a one-finger gap drop. The Civic DNA lives on, both in the car and in those whose lives it has touched. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you on my next video.